Greetings YouTube, this is Sixus. And at this point in Yu-Gi-Oh! We have exactly 10 different part of spell cards. And therefore, I figure it would be very fitting to just go through them and rank them from which ones are the worst and which one's the best. And now, to begin with number 10, we have one that shouldn't really surprise anyone. Part of Generosity. This is a normal spell that says return 2 cards from your hand to your deck, then shuffle your deck. Yeah. It's obvious that this is the worst out of all the part of cards because it is just a -3. Costs you the card and 2 other cards from your hand. That being said, it is as meant to be a joke counterpart card, similar to the Humble Sentry for the Forceful Sentry, or how Cold Feet is to Cold Wave. So it isn't meant to be anything, but at the same time, this is too much discussion than this card deserves.
Number 9.
We have Part of Benevolence. With this card, you select 2 cards from the graveyards, either players, and stuff them into their owner's decks. And after activation, we move this card from play instead of sending it to the graveyard. And you can only activate one of this per turn. So, hardwoods per turn. And all it adds up to is just Transmigration Prophecy. Yeah, just put 2 cards from the other player's graveyards back into the deck. Only, that card is a trap card, doesn't have a hard once per turn, and doesn't banish itself. That's the thing that confused me. That is just pointless. What, so you can't shuffle itself back? Yeah, that's not necessary. Next up, we have Part of Dichotomy. This is actually my favorite out of all these spell cards, which is kind of annoying because this is so low on the list. Let's go through the layers of restrictions this card has. At the start of your main phase 1, target 3 cards with different types in your graveyard, shuffle all 3 of them into the deck. Then draw 2 cards. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this card. Let's unpack this. First of all, you have to be running a deck that uses at least 3 different types of monsters. So immediately ones that come to my mind are Hazy Flame or Constello. So there's quite a few this could work with, but at the same time, you have all these other restrictions added onto it. So you're only restricted what kind of deck this can work in, but then they lay on top of that. It has to be at the start of your main phase 1. To go into this, that means that this is the only part of card you can never use on your first turn. Because you have to have 3 different types of monsters in the graveyard. And then this has to be the very first card you activate. So you cannot set up the graveyard beforehand. Which I find weird the more I think about it. This is the only part of card that is specifically for mid-late game. And because you can never do this on turn 1, the cannot conduct your battle phase restriction is always going to impact you. So this is fail for cards like Soul Charge. But at the same time, this just shuffles 3 back and lets you draw 2. They have to be different types, so it's not going to work in every deck, unlike most of the part of cards. It's just really weird how this one works, and is without a doubt the worst one when it comes to the part of cards that can actually draw you cards. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention is that this is the first of the amalgam parts. Amalgamation parts are the ones that's made out of 2 prior part of cards. This one being part of Benevolence and part of Avarice. Moving on to number 7. we have Part of Duality. First of all, this is another amalgam part. This one being a combination of generosity and greed, the most obvious combination of them. And the effect is excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, add one of them to your hand. Also, after that, shuffle the rest back into your deck. You can only activate one Part of Duality per turn, and also you cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card. That last part is the one that slows this down. It used to be a staple in a bunch of different decks, but the not being able to special summon in link format has definitely hit it. Not to mention we got a lot more beneficial generic part of cards that replaced it. That being said, I'm still in favor of any card that uses the excavation mechanic. Next up, we got number 6, Part of Acquisitiveness. Here's a weird one. So, this one is the only quick play part of spell card. Getting into the effect, it's target 3 banished monsters, shuffle all 3 of them into your deck, then draw 1 card, and the hardwoods per turn. So, okay, banished monsters. That's not too difficult to come by. It's more, I'd say it's a little bit more common than dichotomy's restriction of having multiple different types of monsters. In fact, with decks like Destiny Heroes, I'd say this is even more useful, as you can shuffle back not only ones that you banished via a Law of Darkness, but also banish copies of Melissus. Overall, I'd say this one is a good one, and just being in this mid section of the list, well, it's not that bad and not too good. Same can be said for number 5 on the list that we're going to get to next. But before we get there, one more weird thing about this card. Not only is it an outlier due to the quick play aspect of it, it's also the last one that doesn't have an amalgam variant, which I definitely want to see, especially due to this image I found of what I believe they refer to as Part of Lust. The credit's going to be on the screen. Link to the source is going to be in the description. But yeah, I like how this one looks, and I would love to see this being used, and I have no clue what effect they would go with. Obviously, something regarding banishing. Actually, a lot of the more recent parts just have to do with banishing. Hopefully, this one would be face up, though. Moving on to number 5. Like I said, both these are just interchangeable as far as spots. This one is Part of Witches. It's a spell card that lets you shuffle 3 pendulum monsters into your deck from your graveyard or face up in your extra deck. Then you get to draw 2 cards. There's a hard one per turn, and the restriction is you cannot special summon the turn you activate this card except by pendulum. And it doesn't say for the rest of the turn, it says for the entire turn. So you can't special summon and then use this effect, which is a restriction. I definitely think that limited, especially given that, well, with pendulums, you definitely need to get out a card like Heavy Metal Foes Electrum in order to free up more of your zones. And when this card was released, the shuffling from the graveyard was very useful because pendulum monsters aren't really recoverable that way. On to number 4. Now we're getting to the really good ones. You can tell because this one is banned. We have Part of Avarice. This one lets you target 5 monsters in your graveyard, shuffle all 5 of them into the deck, and then draw 2 cards. So, yeah, get back 5 monsters, draw 2 cards, no hard ones per turn, no additional restrictions like with the Witches or Dichotomy or Duality. Yeah, this was straightforward, it's good. Number 3, we have part of extravagance. Part of extravagance, similar to dichotomy, has the clause at the beginning that says you can only use this at the start of your main phase 1. And with this one, you banish 3 or 6 random face down monsters from your extra deck, then draw 1 for every 3 cards banished by this effect. And for this is done, after this card resolves, you cannot draw any cards by card effects. I'll admit, not as bad as a summoning restriction. Because you are just using this to get 2 cards. Now, the main phase 1 restriction, I think that's so you don't get off free. You know, like if you have cards in your extra deck and there's just a few that you need, you can't summon that from the extra deck to make sure that one's safe, then banish those. Because, you know, like it said, it banishes those random face down, so not really recoverable as outside of what, Necro Face? Oh, and also because it has been started main phase 1, you can't like bait out negates. This is gonna be the card that would get negated. I forgot to mention, it's another amalgam part. This being a combination of witches and greed. Hence why the very useful effect, and since witches is more pendulum focused, the extract direction does make sense. Next up, we have number 2, part of desires. I'm sure everyone knows what this one does. Banish the top 10 cards of your deck face down. Draw 2, and then hard once per turn clause. No start of main phase 1 restriction. No summon restrictions. No drawing restrictions. Only thing there is a hard once per turn. Oh, and also this one works really well with cards like Eater of Millions and Grand Maiju. So there are specific decks that this not only helps as it's a staple, it kind of helps with everything, but it helps some even more so due to fitting with the strategy. It makes sense for this one to be this good. It's a combination of the 2 banned ones, Avarice and Pot of Greed. Care to take a wild guess what number 1 is? Pot of Greed. I'm not reading the effect. It's 3... No, it's not even 3 words. It's 2 words and a number. You see the effect right there. Is there a restriction? No. You can activate it whenever. Is there... You can't spare someone? No. Is there a harder one? No. It's Pot of Greed. It is without a doubt the best part of card. And the reason they made a lot of these ones after it have so many restrictions on them. The fact that we had to end up with Dichotomy, a card that has 3 restrictions on it. Okay, let me rephrase that. 2 restrictions, 1 condition that cannot be achieved by every deck. But yeah, that's all the best ones. It's so to be kind of obvious, and like I said, the only one... Well, like I said, the 2 in the middle, Acquisitiveness and Witches, I think those could go either way. Though it is fitting that the bottom 4 are all made up of the Generosity, Benevolence ones, with no signs of any greed until you get to duality. And even with the card artwork, you can barely see the greed aspect of it. Meanwhile, with the top 3, greed is prominent. As well as avarice, which is just, you know, a synonym for greed. But yeah, that's my ranking of these. feel free to give me your opinions in the comments. Do you think that I should be changed up? Actually, no, here's a good question. What do you think is better, desires or extravagance? Yeah, that's a good question to leave off on. Anyway, thanks for watching.